Thanks everyone for joining us today. Welcome to BRIC's Pre-Apprenticeship Speaker Series, where we aim to give you an inside look at the various careers across entertainment, media, and tech with help from the industry pros themselves. I'm Sarah, I'm BRIC's Director of Communications and your moderator for this series. And today's session, we're diving into 2D animation with special guest Christina Fidler. I don't know what side of the screen she is next to me, who is an award-winning director and animator. You'll get to hear from Christina about her career journey, what led her to this career, and her process for frame by frame hand drawn animating. Before we get started, I do want to remind everyone that we like to have a live Q&A session during the last 15 minutes. So make sure you use that Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen to submit any questions along the way for Christina. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Christina, for your presentation.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Thanks for moderating, and thank all of you guys. Well, this is me thanking you for tuning in, to hear about me and my life and my career as an animator. I think I know I'm very lucky to be able to kind of pursue this as a career. It takes a lot of work and a lot of diligence and a lot of resilience, I would say, in this day and age. But, you know, this was like little me dressed as Sonic the Hedgehog. And I guess I just included this slide to tell you to follow your dreams because I was really into cartoons. It's funny, I'm wearing my Animaniacs sweater right now because I'm feeling a little under the weather and I wanted to get all cozy. But Animaniacs was the reason I wanted to become an animator. When I learned that people were making cartoons, I think this is like a story every animator kind of tells, but I used to be able to figure out like which studio was doing the work because like the models always looked a little different. I loved playing Sonic the Hedgehog and reading comics and yeah, I don't know. The follow your dreams thing is like driving me crazy, but yeah, follow your dreams. I've wanted to do this since I was little. In some way, shape, or form. I used to think I wanted to be like a pencil artist on like a comic book series. I wanted to be a voice actor. I get to do all of those things in the shorts that I do, which is really fun. So it is possible. Follow your dreams. Anyway, so this is me. I am an animator director, and a lot of my work is inspired by, like whether it's intentional or not, I think a lot of it is subconscious just because it's the stuff I grew up around. But like 90s cartoons and 70s aesthetics are like the things that I was always finding myself gravitating towards. So I think in a way, my work just kind of became a lot of that. I get a lot of like, oh, this reminds me of like Rocco's Modern Life or like a Saturday morning cartoon. And I don't know, even in the way I dress usually. Um, Not in my Animaniac sweater, but uh I like to just kind of play with color and patterns and being very bright. And I think I have a pretty bright and loud disposition. So yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I do is about my own lived experience. I have a lot of feelings. I mean, we all do. But I think what I really like to do is just kind of take the things that make me really anxious or make me feel really terrible, or the things that make me feel really good, and kind of blow them up into these really obscene scenarios and like poke fun at them, punch them up and stuff, and just have other people be like, oh my God, like, I know that feeling. So true. I think one of my favorite things about being able to make, well, anything I really like, being able to bring my own vision to life and have people respond to that in their own kind of vulnerable way is something that I really love. So yeah, I'm from New York City. I went to college in Baltimore. I went to MICA. So I lived there for a couple of years and then I moved to LA and I've been here for 4 years now. Yeah, I graduated class of 2020, COVID, the start of COVID. And some of my clients include Adult Swim, Comedy Central, BuzzFeed, Bento Box, Tremolo Productions, which is a documentary company, and I've helped them make things for Netflix and HBO. worked at Giphy, all of these things. So I write, I direct, I storyboard, I animate, I pitch TV shows, and pretty much do everything. So the stuff that my tools of the trade, I do 2D hand drawn frame by frame stuff, and I'll do like a little bit of puppets, and I do compositing and After Effects and stuff. But my bread and butter is like doing the hand drawn work. So it's a mix of like traditional pencil paper sometimes, if I have enough time, and digital, which I've heard people say tradigital before, so I'll say it here so other people can say it. Pencil and paper, TV Paint or Adobe Animate, Photoshop. I use Photoshop for backgrounds, for coloring like assets and stuff, and compositing it all, like I said, in Adobe After Effects. And my illustration work is often a mix of graphite or Photoshop, handmade textures. Yeah. So, like I was saying earlier, my kind of cycle of creating stuff is I feel an intense emotion or have an experience, and then I try to find something really funny about it, or something that kind of packages the idea into something that other people can receive, like, and for me, it's always putting it in a box of humor, a box of jokes. And then I make a note like on my phone or in my sketchbook, and then I draw it. And then I just keep drawing it and trying to figure out what it is I want to articulate. I will do voice memos. I will do stupid voices, and just try to find character in whatever idea it is that I'm trying to like whittle away at. Because I feel like, creating is an iterative process. You have to, your first idea isn't always the idea, but it's definitely like the seed, and then you just have to keep watering it and like trying different things. And honestly, I know people that really love the iterative process. They love like generating and like being like, oh, here's an idea and here's an idea and like this is going to work, and if I craft this out. I don't like the beginning of it personally. But that's just because I'm impatient. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is kind of generally the cycle that I follow. Let's see what the next slide is. Yes. So I graduated in 2020 and I started pretty much right out of college working at Comedy Central, pitching like jokes and like punch ups and ideas for a digital series that they had. And when everybody, all my friends and my family, like, were like, oh my God, Comedy Central, they were like, oh my God, that's going to look amazing on your resume, and you're set for life, and you're a big time animator over here. Comedy Central, you're never going to have to struggle or have a hard time finding animation jobs ever again. Um, it was a really fun job. And I've had work since, but having the one job, doesn't really kind of open a floodgate for all of the other things. You kind of have to, it's like a building blocks process, It's like, okay, I start here and I can put that on my resume and I can use that experience and pitch myself to the next thing. But it's not like everyone's gonna go, oh my God, like you got that one name on a resume. Like I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions about that stuff when you're in school. And I think that like it is important to build a resume. Like, yeah, you got to build a resume and this is great. But I think sometimes people will really jump the gun and be like, oh my God, like you're in. And it's like, there are a lot of people, because I think the state of the industry. There are a lot of people that have been doing this for way longer than me, way longer than you guys, and it's still hard. I mean, we've inherited a very, very, very strange and very uncertain time in entertainment. I inherited the COVID animation boom, but I didn't have a foot in the door at the time. So right when I had started, everyone was like, oh my God, we can make cartoons from home, and it's like so lucrative. And then that bubble popped, and then they canceled everything, and everyone was everything was on fire. But I guess what I'm trying to say is like, not in a doomer way, have low expectations, but have, like set expectations where you're like, okay, I'm going to take this one step at a time. because you never really know what's going to happen. But I think the key is to just focus on what you've got in front of you and maybe the next step, like the step ahead of that, but maybe not all the way at the end. The big picture, it's good to keep in your heart to keep you motivated when you're like, yeah, like this is what I really want to do. Whenever you're kind of like looking at your stuff and you're like, what the hell am I doing? It's for the thing that really fills you with joy. But everyone right now is honestly high key afraid with mergers and AI and just generally the entertainment industry's lack of respect for animation as a craft. Like, AI and automation has a place in certain fields, but my personal take is that it should stay out of the creative arena. I mean, it's important to understand what's happening and to be knowledgeable of the tools that people are using, educate yourself, keep yourself up to date on where things are going, and know what you can offer that AI can't. Um, and like it's there's a lot of different opinions about AI in media and entertainment. I'm not here to be like, this is the one way, but this is my own like personal take on it. I think, artists in control of AI is obviously something that is like important and better than AI just being the thing that runs everything. But, I still think that there's nothing like the human touch. But with that being said, seriously, learn about those things, know where it's going, and diversify your skills. I do everything, which I think is why I've been lucky to have the work that I've had. I storyboard, I animate, I write, I direct, I design. So, when I was growing up and people were like, you need to have a specialty, I never thought that was, I don't know. I never had a specialty. I liked doing everything. Some things more than others, but I like doing everything. So diversify your skills. That I think that is very important. And my own patented Christina Fiddler pie chart here is just kind of this philosophy that I have, where I think that succeeding in this industry and doing what it is you want to do is a mix of who you know, your talent and your skill, your luck, which is right place, right time. You can't control that, and your diligence. So I think it's like 30% of putting yourself out there, meeting people, networking, which I view as just kind of building relationships without trying to, without having an end goal of using somebody for something. You're just making connections and you're trading information and you're trading opportunity. Your talent and your skill, you work on that, you hone that. Diligence, you deal with rejection, you deal with getting denied, you deal with making mistakes, and you pick yourself back up again and you keep making. I think that's a really important part of it. Yeah, and then 25% of it is luck, which you can't control, but you can like increase the probability, by putting yourself out there, by going to events and submitting things, and you can make some of your own luck, but some of it really is just timing. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, but that is my philosophy. So for me, now that you can finally see some of the stuff that I do, after Comedy Central, I worked at Bento Box making, I wrote and directed and animated shorts for their incubator program, A Studio Digital. Streamed on their TikTok, their Instagram, their Twitch. I don't think they have the Twitch anymore, but we used to do like Twitch streams, and I built like a program where we would do this like one of my best friends makes music and we would like take like suggestions from the audience, and it would be like, we're going to make up a song right now and I'm going to do the album cover and my friend is going to do the song, and it was really fun, absurd, like off the cuff kind of stuff. And so I made a bunch of these shorts and I've made more of them since. I do them on and off still. They're really fun. The people that I worked with there, my producer is really awesome. I really view her as somebody that has been there for me since the start of my career. So it's a special relationship. But I made a bunch of shorts for them. And then I moved to Los Angeles and I started working at BuzzFeed. I worked there for 10 months and it was much more of a corporate setting than like a freelance. Like I was freelance, but it was like a 9 to 5 kind of, which for me personally, I've learned is not really the way I like to work. And we'll talk about, if anybody has any questions about that kind of stuff, like put a pin in it and we'll talk about it at the end. Because I love to talk about, just managing a schedule as a freelancer. But yeah, I worked at BuzzFeed. I wrote and directed like over 20 videos that were like on all of their platforms for the series called Weird Helga that is now on hiatus indefinitely. But it was really fun, and I was really lucky because my boss, this was her show. She kind of really let us do anything. Like she was like, draw them in your style. The joy of this show is that like it looks like it's made by different people and it's told by different people and you can just kind of pick up anywhere. So that was really fun. And then, oh, I forgot that's an autoplay. I'll show you a video that I made at Giphy, which was really fun. I pitched this idea, I wrote it, directed it, animated it, and it came from a stupid voice memo I made where I was like, thinking about a person that I knew or a relationship that I was like in and like, I don't know. Anyway, I'll show it to you.
Dear Diary, every day I wake up saddled with the knowledge that I am smarter than everyone around me. No one feels as deeply as I do. No one feels as deeply about feeling deeply as I do. I understand the feeling of feeling something deeper, deeper than too many people in my life. Sigh. It is a lonely road. I suppose it is a gift, but it is also a curse. Maybe if I just shut the f up and keep my head down, I can let the burning resentment swallow me whole until I inflict the pain I feel onto someone else. Yeah, that's a great idea. Thanks, Diary.
So, oh, I hope it doesn't play again. Okay, good, it doesn't. Yeah, that was a short I made. It's also like poking fun at the times where I've felt like the victim of a victim of the universe. It's just something that I think is like a universal. You have been that person or you know somebody like that. And that's the kind of thing that I think I like to play with a lot. And that was really fun. And it was really fun. It was like one of the first times it was like, wow, they gave me complete like creative control. They paid me like 4 grand to make like this. It was supposed to be 30 seconds. I made 40. But it was like so I was like, this is really awesome. I really like doing this. And then I'll show you something. What is this? Is this yes? Oh, well. This is another thing I did.
Bill Gates and the liberal world order are orchestrating a scheme to force people to eat bugs. Their agenda is to weaken the lower classes with protein-forced insect diets. Oh, I feel bad if I was doing that. Okay, next. No, this is even better. Bill Gates is a shape-shifting lizard, part of the reptilian race that includes Tom Hanks and Lady Gaga. These lizard people are secretly exerting global control. Someone mentioned this one to me. I didn't know we had Tom Hanks in on it, though. I mean, that's great. Bill Gates pursuing immortality by consuming baby's blood. Bill Gates' massive farmland holdings are secretly supplying potatoes to McDonald's to embed their French fries with vaccines, one Happy Meal at a time. I eat McDonald's. Okay, one last one. After a fatal car crash, Bill Gates and his ex-wife Melinda have been replaced by clones. The team of scientists created replacements to keep his control over the world never ending. No, Melinda, I think, is still a real person. I do my best.
Oh, it's gonna keep going. Cool. Let's see. I'm just gonna. Oh, I can do this. That's awesome. Okay. Well, basically. Oh yeah.
Here.
Anyway, sorry, I kind of stripped the context from that, but I guess I just really wanted to kind of jump into like the point of showing you guys this was so I was hired to make these like UPA style, like Rocky and Bullwinkle-esque animations for this docu-series that was directed by a colleague of mine, Morgan Neville, who is a client I really like working with. And he was like, we're working on this conspiracy, like we're working on this docu-series about misinformation on the internet, and we want to animate, like it's hosted by Bill Gates, and we want to animate like conspiracy theories that, he's never heard about himself before. And so it was awesome because I was like trusted with designing everything. I was hired to design and to animate and to basically like pitch these boards. So everything that I did was all me. And I worked with Morgan. Obviously, Morgan was the director. He had a vision. He was like, let's, have a sign here, or let's like, change this idea and make it a little bit different. But it was really cool because even though it's like not something that I wrote, and it was like work for hire in the way of like, the client has a vision and I'm kind of bringing it to life. I had so much creative freedom. And I had a lot of fun making it. Like I got to do, I was hired for my vision, which I think is like a very, very, I don't know, I was like really honored to have that opportunity. And that's like kind of the other side of the work that I do. It's like I do things that are mine with my voice, and then I do things that have my voice that help kind of heighten other people's things, which I think both are awesome, and I love doing them both. Um, I also pitch television shows. This is a show that I worked on with a writer friend of mine, Allison Agosti. It's called Welcome to Earth. It's based on a short that I made with a colleague of mine a couple of years ago. And it was a group of wayward skaters. They're rudely interrupted from doing nothing with their lives when an alien ship lands in their irradiated desert town. So when I made the short, we got a lot of feedback being like, "Oh, you should pitch this as a show. Like you should give this a try. Like this is really good. This could be really be something. There's a tone, there's a vibe." So you don't get paid to make pitches, you kind of do that on your own time. So Agasti and I kind of spent months, like pretty much like I would say like almost a year, on and off, kind of putting together this pitch and this deck. And we pitched it to Adult Swim, and we pitched it to Paramount, and we pitched it to 20th Century, and people really liked it. Like I was pitching to, friends of mine, like execs that are friends of mine who, weren't just like telling me things I wanted to hear. They were like, "We really like this, but it's the people upstairs, it's not the time, or we already have this on our slate." Like it's part of the timing thing, and it's part of the diligence thing. It didn't get picked up. There's still a chance to pitch it. Things change. People are looking for different things all the time, but we put a lot of work into this weird desert town, group of like stoner kids that skate and get involved with really weird irradiated creatures and like deal with really kooky townsfolk. Like it was a really fun, it was a really special project, and it still is really special. I think about it. There's so many things that remind Agasti and me about the project, and it's not dead. We just have to shelve it and pick it back up and tweak it and try it again another time. So that was a show that I worked on, or a pitch that I worked on that didn't work out. And it's fine because I learned a lot. I learned a lot about pitching. I learned a lot about how to write. I mean, Agasti, she writes for a living, like that's her thing. She's worked on all of these animated shows and all of these late night comedy shows. And I learned a lot, and it was really invaluable. And I hope one day this gets to see the light of day. But, I'm glad. I'm like looking at it. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I'm glad I did this. Anyway, a show that did work out for me though is this series that is coming out February 20th on Adult Swim called Meeble and Creeble. I pitched, so this idea came to me in 2021. It's based on me and a best friend of mine. And we had we were going through it, COVID. My friend was going through a breakup. I had just finished my job at Comedy Central, and I didn't know what was going to happen. And we kind of fell into this obsession with like spirituality and like, like Twitter astrologists and like all of those like kind of like entry level like TikTok astrology kind of things, and I remember being like, this could be really funny. Like, I don't know, it was just an idea where I was like, like this is like, there's something here that could be really insane. And it's a very crude, very raunchy, like best friend duo that kind of just gets into trouble, kind of denying reality and like relying on tarot cards and like again like TikTok astrology and all of these absurd like shallow ways of pursuing like mysticism and spirituality, um and they just kind of ignore the truth, and in the process of trying to make things, to achieve the things that they want, they kind of cause destruction. So I pitched this to Adult Swim Smalls, their incubator program, in I guess the summer of, not this past summer but the summer before, and they got back to me and they were like, let's do it. So it's a 3 episode miniseries. So it's about 13 minutes of animation total that I made in a year, all by myself. I did have help coloring. I did have coloring assists and stuff, but I wrote and I animated and I directed the sound and the sound effects and the sound design. And yeah, it was just a project I got to do with some of my closest friends. And I am really grateful and I'm really lucky. So February 20th, it comes out. So that was a win. So there are losses and there are wins. But yeah, so I love animation. Like I said, I moved to LA. After I lived in Baltimore, I moved to LA in 2022. My career did get infinitely easier. That's my personal experience. You can do this stuff anywhere, but for me, it was just I knew so many people here from the internet already. I knew like I was meeting people at events, and it just became so much easier for me to have my foot in the door. But share your work. That's how I knew half the people I knew before I moved here. I was posting my work online. I was, like connecting with people. I was just making friends. And yeah, I mean, there's so many people that move to a place like Los Angeles and they don't know anyone. So it's like the internet, as many feelings as I have about the internet, um, it's actually, it make it work for you. Meet people, share your stuff, put it out there. It's scary, but it's the rewards and the rewards of that, I think outweigh the kind of anxiety or like the frustration of like, putting stuff out there and it not being received, like just keep doing it. That's all I can say is just keep doing it. Participate in open calls, festival submissions, apply for grants. Silver Lake Shorts, I feel like everybody kind of knows it now. I remember when they were mostly live action and not animation, and now they're mostly animation. Silver Lake Shorts, Television Television, my friends Michael and Peter run that. They it's like an open call like twice a year. It's like it's around a theme, and they want you to do it fast, quick, sloppy. Like it doesn't have to be perfect. It's about having fun, and they stitch all of these together. They make an event, and they've had some of the funnest events, and now they're doing them everywhere because they're based. Michael and Peter are based in Minneapolis, and they do screenings there. They do screenings in LA, they do screenings in New York, they do Boston, they're doing freaking Australia, like they're going everywhere. London. So it's a really awesome thing. And then my friend Sarah runs Malt Adult, which is based in Chicago. These are things that you should definitely just tune into, follow, get to know, participate in. I think that's honestly the best way to meet people like people like us. Attend events, festivals, and screenings. Festivals are the best if you have the means to attend one. Ottawa, Pictoplasma, Annecy, they're like summer camp vibes on steroids. They are so fun. It's insane how your biggest complaint of the day is I sat in a dark climate controlled room and watched shorts all day and I'm really tired. It really makes you think about honestly how lucky we are to be able to pursue art in entertainment. It's a really fun time. If you can't, those things cost money, but like there are ways to volunteer so that you can take some of the costs kind of out of the equation. Submitting things, seeing if you get in. I feel like most festivals nowadays don't really cover your travel, but some of them, cover where you stay, they cover your pass. So go to those if you can. I think that they are very fun. I've been to Ottawa 5 or 6 times since I was in college. It's like another family to me. Picto is in Berlin. I've never been, and I'm aiming to submit my Adult Swim show there and get to go. I haven't been to Annecy yet. That's in France. I really want to go. I think I'm going to try and make that stuff work. I think it's really, really fun. Get animation educated. There's so many awesome small and big animation stars and lore and screenings and secrets. Like animation isn't just, like, oh yeah, like, and this is no, this isn't a dig or a rub, but like, like there's entertainment animation, you're like, oh yeah, like I know Rebecca Sugar's work or whatever, but there's also like indie animators of like, there's like the Angela Kirkwoods, the Nanny Lynn's. Nobody knows Nanny Lynn. The story of Nanny Lynn is really awesome. She was this old woman who, well, now she's old, but she was younger then. She was like a software like developer, and she got one of the early copies of like Corel Studio Paint. And she was working in that and Flash, like the very original Flash, to make these like, they're so like archaic and bizarre looking, but these like insane fairy tales that she made up, just the stream of consciousness that she would like make up and share with her grandsons. And so she made these animations for them. And this was again like in the 90s and stuff. And they were like all on floppy disks. And the floppy disks got like shared out into the world. They got leaked, and nobody knew who like Nanny Lynn, like everyone was like, who's Nanny Lynn? Like, is this like a pseudonym? Like, who's this person? It was all over Reddit. It was all over like the animation undercurrent internet. And then my friends were able to like track her down. My friends, Sam Gurry and James, they had like a panel with her. They like had a call and we got to like have a Q&A with her and talk about her experience. I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of really fun stuff beyond just like what's even in like on TV or like what's just in the zeitgeist, There's a lot of stuff like under that I think is really, I don't know, just get animation educated. I think there's a lot of really fun stuff. And I guess we're kind of, approaching the Q&A section of this, but I guess some of my golden nuggets of advice. I think I've kind of been saying this kind of sprinkled throughout, but being an artist and pursuing art for a living is a choice you make every single day. It's a privilege to be able to do that for a living, but it's also really not easy. It is really not easy. I have had a really crazy year. I mean, well, the year just started, but last year of work and having to advocate for myself and having dry spells and then being overwhelmed with so much work. It is not easy. So be grateful and also show up for yourself every day, because you're making that choice every day. Reach out and ask for help. People want to help you. Your friends in your corner want to help you. Don't think of networking as networking. Take a legitimate interest in people. That's my personal approach. I feel like I'm here to just talk to people, make friends, and if things fall into place. Like I also think there's nothing wrong with I don't really believe in like talking around stuff either. So it's like if I know a producer and I'm looking for work, I'll be like, hey, I'm just talking to them like people, like, hey, let me know if you've got anything. It's like a little dry over here, and I've got some time in my schedule, and I would love to work on something. You know, be direct. Be mindful of other people's time as well as your own when you're picking up projects or when you're saying no to projects or when you're helping other people out or when you're asking people for stuff. Just be mindful of everybody's time. Um, Support other, like it's you like be confident in yourself and be confident in your friends and your colleagues that you support and love, because you want that when you put something big out, you want them to also be there for you. And it's just fun because then you guys can all work on stuff together, and enjoy school. It's like one of the last times, and if you go to art school, if you go to college after, I'm not one to be like, you have to go to college and art school after. If you choose to do that, or if you don't, I think art school and just being in school as an institution, it's one of the last times people like have to look at the work that you make, before you go out into the wild and you're kind of on the quest to get people to look at your stuff. So really savor the time that you have, with like an institution and a community, because that's like one of the few times people, are right there to look at your stuff, to see what it is that you're doing, to give you feedback. So I think that's important. And yeah, I mean, I wrapped up maybe 5 minutes early, but I just kind of I talked a lot, so I'm sure there are a lot of questions. Questions, anybody?
That was awesome, Christina. First of
Thank
all,
you.
thank you so much for walking us through that presentation. I loved your last golden nuggets of advice. Before we dive into the Q&A, I missed a question in the chat earlier from Kennedy, who said
Sure.
she also lived in Baltimore and she's got to know, Old Bay seasoning, yes or no?
I'm neutral. I like Old Bay on crab, yeah, but I don't like Old Bay on fries. So I'm kind of like, I'm not an Old
Oh,
Bay head, but I'm like an Old Bay supporter.
good answer. Good answer.
My diplomatic political answer.
All right, so let's dive into the Q&A. Folks, make sure to use the Q&A button to submit any questions you have here. The first one that we received from an anonymous attendee asks, as a person who enjoys doing everything myself, I find it hard when applying to jobs since my portfolio is not specialized. Do you have any tips on how to navigate this problem?
Yeah, I mean, I relate to it, and I still do because even when I think about submitting stuff to places, it's hard because I'm like, oh, but the final product is the thing that showcases all of the stuff that I do. I'm not like I know how to storyboard, but I'm not a storyboard artist. So I guess I'm not the kind of person that's like, oh, pick a specialty. But if there are jobs that you are interested in that, are like, if you're applying to a storyboard job, I think when you're making something and you're doing all the parts, really pay attention to how you're making the boards. You know what I mean? Like, start thinking about every piece that you like to do and think about it as like, if I sent this to someone, would they understand it as well as I do? Because that's part of the problem that I face when I do everything, is that I'm like, okay, I'm only making this for me. So I understand the boards, I understand the script, I understand these thumbnails, I know what they look like. I think start thinking about, I say, obviously, prioritize you understanding stuff, get everything out, make the work that you need to make, but then start looking back on it before you start moving on and being like, okay, can other people understand this? If I was working with a team and I sent this to someone, would they be able to get it? And I think when you start thinking about that and you start making things, or like tweaking things, and cleaning things up with that in mind, then you'll have pieces from your big picture work that you can put together as a portfolio. If you're like, I'm making 3 films, and then you've got, when you start thinking about the boards and you're like, okay, like I cleaned up these boards. I spruced them up. I made them clear. I made them strong. It works for me. It benefits me and it benefits someone else. Then it's like, okay, you've got 3 sets of boards for a storyboard job that you can apply for. So I think, because I struggle with the same thing, I think a lot of it is just thinking about clarity for other people and what it means if you were managing a team or if you were like communicating ideas with someone else. Once you start doing that, I mean, one, I think your work will improve because you're starting to think about that more. But also, yeah, just think about that. I would say think about that stuff while you're doing it, not after, because you don't want to make a finished film and then go back into your boards and clean them up just so that somebody can get them. Because I've done that and it sucks and it didn't work. Like, do it, think about it while you're doing it, if that makes sense.
I like that advice. Christina, do you feel like for someone's portfolio, it is beneficial for them as an animator to show like their work in progress or sorry, like the behind the scenes of what it took to get them to the final piece, like their storyboards, their character designs, that kind
Yeah,
of stuff?
I would say for a targeted portfolio, like if you were applying to a job through a portal or if you were talking to like a recruiter or to like a development person, I would say stick to the meat of the like, if you're like talking about a board thing, you give them the boards because I think people like that are looking through all of that stuff all the time. But I think that you should definitely put those on your website. You can definitely share about your process, have that all on display because people who have a little bit more time to kind of peruse are going to get the bigger picture, and recruiters and like all of those people that you send those targeted portfolios to, when they've got more time, they look at that stuff too. So I would say there's a time and a place for that, and there's a time and a place for just the work, you know,
Love
because
that.
there's like people's time, it's precious. Sometimes they're just like, a lot of them are always like, I figure out who I like in 30 seconds. I look at a reel and I know in 30 seconds. So you want to be clear, you want to be concise when it's just about the job. But everything else, share it. You should share it all the time. I think it's
I
important.
love that. I think that's such a clever way to follow your advice about share, share, share.
Hmm.
The behind, like save the behind the scenes stuff maybe for your Instagram, to
Yes.
like help build your social presence.
Yes, it gives you potatoes to share with the meat, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's like when my show drops on the 20th of February, shameless plug, I have all of this work, all of these boards and like sketches and notes and like processes from like a whole year and a half of making a show. And it's like I can't wait to milk your work for what it's worth. It takes so much effort to work in animation, to make a product, make a final thing. Like, milk it for what it's worth on your social media, on your website. Yes, you worked really hard. Be proud of it.
Great. All right, we've got another question from Alex Flores who says, thank you so much for sharing so much insight and congratulations on your success. I am a professor at LA City College, and a lot of my students are interested in independent animation and creating an animation festival on campus. Do you have advice on how to create a festival or other events on campus that will help them get indie animators' attention in the LA area? Christina, you're the expert
Yes,
on this.
yes, because I started a festival when I was in college. I did the Micah Film and Animation Festival, and we had it at the Parkway. Um, and we made it like a multiple like because it's not just Micah that's there. There's UMBC and Towson and like all of these other like schools that we kind of opened it up, and we talked to the professors in the art departments there about just kind of putting a call out to their students, and we just kind of had our own team of like student curators, and we had one professor who kind of managed. She was like like the whatever they call it, like the student, the like the organizer. or
Mhm.
like I don't know what you'd call, like a supervisor. There you go.
Yes.
That's the word, supervisor. Because we were doing all the organizing. But what we did was we had this thing called the Student Voice Association. And so as a student, me and my like colleague, my co-programmer, we went to the Student Voice Association and they give budgets. They allot budgets. So like we were able to rent out the parkway. Well, actually, I honestly think they gave it to us for free because we talked to the programmers there and we were students. So they were like, "What? Of course." But we had to like rent the other spaces on the campus. But the parkway was off campus and it's kind of the hub of like a lot of, like, we had the Hopkins kids, we had the Micah kids, we had screenings there all the time, like they show movies. So we talked to like a venue that, supports, the indie arts. They were like really excited that there were students that were trying to spearhead this, or that were spearheading this movement or this event. um and we opened it up to multiple universities, and it was really awesome because we had high school kids showing up, and they were like, we want to, like, like, we heard about this, and we were like, how did you hear about that? That's so awesome. So it really was just like, I think the power is in the numbers. So it's like, I can also, like, I have my email, I have my contact here, because I would be very happy to get you connected with my friend Sam Gurry, who's a professor. I can't remember the school that they're a professor, but it's here in the area. So I will definitely, I would love to talk about that because I think, yeah, the Micah Film and Animation Festival was so fun, so special. And yeah, I don't know, just finding the students that really care about the vision, really care about making the work. You can get a lot of people to make a poster and talk to people about venues. Because I feel like, especially when students are like in charge of this thing, bringing it to life, people really want to support that and give what they can to create that, because it's for the students, it's student forward. So yeah, I hope that was enough to answer that for now, but if you want to talk about it later, my email is here.
Amazing. Alex chimed in on the chat saying, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Love that. Speaking of resources in and around LA, we have another question from Rachel who says, for someone newer to doing their own animation, are there any specific resources you'd recommend, like videos, classes, etc.? I'm in LA, anything local?
Yeah, so I would say there's a lot. I mean, obviously come to a Silver Lake Shorts. You're Go to Silver Lake Shorts, meet people there. It's not like a technical learning kind of class, it's just a screening, but watch the work, talk to people, and you'll definitely find out a lot more. But Heavy Manners has great figure drawing workshops. It's Heavy Manners is based in Echo Park, where I live. It's like a DIY venue space. It's a gallery. It's a library. They sell records too, and books. Scribble LA does a lot of events. They do art markets, they do figure drawing classes. And then there's oh, what's the name of that other one? Junior High. Junior High, I think it's in Glendale. Junior High does a lot of events, a lot of workshops. They do like, I met a friend who was doing cell painting workshops there. Again, figure drawing. In terms of like animation, like how to do a story, like storyboard class or something like that, like courses, I'm not familiar with any that are local. Because any of my friends that are doing them are really doing them online. Um, but I would say, yeah, come to places like Scribble, Heavy Manners, Junior High. And yeah, I would say those are some of my favorites to follow because they'll post all different kinds of workshops. I know Heavy Manners has animation workshops that they do, run by my friend Corinne. So yeah, I would say just kind of like follow those are like my big three that I can think about in the LA area that I really personally enjoy, that I find accessible. But yeah, that's, I would say, is the jumping off point.
Great. Great resources. We've got a question from Isabel who says, hi, amazing work and presentation. I was wondering how you deal with art block or feeling stuck while working on a project.
Oh yeah, I'm like the age-old question. Honestly, art block sucks. Um, I am still figuring out the formula. I don't even know if there is a formula really, but I kind of put things into two buckets because I feel like the more I put pressure on myself, the harder it is to break free, right? So I kind of see things as like there's the bucket of active thought and the bucket of passive thought. And passive thought is like when I'm in the shower and I'm just like thinking, and I have like a, I don't know, like I think of something like pasta pasta, please pass the pasta or what, like, I think of something stupid. And then I'm like, oh, that's really funny. And I just put it in my notes. I just leave it there, let it marinate, or like active thought where I'm sitting down and I'm going, okay, I'm going to make something, or I'm writing a poem, or I'm writing a story, or I'm designing a character. And that's like the active thought kind of bubble. So I feel like instead of thinking of it as like, how do I get past this? How do I get past this? I try to, one, maybe, carve some time out to try to actively put things on paper, even if I don't like it. No one has to see it. And then I also just try to not put pressure on myself and let the ideas kind of like flow when they want to, like because there's a lot working on, like there's a lot working in the back of your head, you
Mhm.
know, and one day you'll just kind of be like, oh, that's crazy. I never thought about that before. That's really funny, or that's like really good. So I think one, don't be hard on yourself about it. Two, um, you know, have a little discipline, show up when show up, do a little bit of work, but you don't have to be like, I gotta sit at my desk for 8 hours a day and try to break through. Just be like, I'll do 15 minutes of like free associative thinking or something. And then just keep, whenever something brings you joy, gets you excited, you see something funny, you hear something weird, anything that like gives you a reaction, document it. Like write a note, make a voice memo, take a photo, and just collect it all. So that way you can look at things that kind of inspire you or be like, oh my God, I forgot that somebody said that once. That's really weird. Or I really like that. How do I, you know? So I think don't be hard on yourself and just continue to document things that you enjoy so that you can always look back and have kind of like your own Pinterest that's not filled with AI generative content. Analog Pinterest.
Your mind Pinterest.
Yes, your mind Pinterest.
Love that. We've got a question from Vincent here who asks, how do you manage your schedule with freelancing? Do you have a constant daily/weekly schedule, or is it go with the flow? P.S. I love your work.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad. I was like, you must have thought of that when I said pin this for later because I would love to answer that question. Um, so the rule of thumb that I've heard, like just in the couple of years, I'm not green anymore. Like I'm not new to this, but there's still a lot of things that I am learning, and it's still a lot of things that I am experiencing that I have not experienced before. I think I'm still young. I think I'm still young in this industry. I'm 27. And I've been doing this, I guess, here for 4 or 5 years. But the rule of thumb I've heard is balancing 2 to 4, 3 to 4, I guess, ideally, freelance projects at a time. That's like a full slate of work. Um, so I had a lot of stuff on my plate the last year. That was very overwhelming. But making a schedule works for some people, like writing it down in the day, being like, okay, I'm going to work on project one from 9 to 2, and I'm going to work on project two from 3 to 5, and then project three will be the first thing I deal with tomorrow. Some people like to write it down. Excuse me. I don't write it down. I kind of, I have an, I know how I work now. I understand, and that's another thing is like knowing how you work is really important because it's what you sell to clients. It's what you sell to, other people. It's you. It's you that you're pitching. So you need to know how you work so you can create realistic deadlines. You can have people, you can set expectations for people. I know how I work, so I kind of am a little bit more intuitive, and I'm very open to kind of shifting things when certain projects demand more attention. A friend of mine, she would make a schedule. She'd be like, make a production schedule, make a production schedule. I like to write tasks. I like to do all the tasks and order them by most pressing to least pressing. And that's across all of the projects I have to do. So I'll be like, project two's thing I have to get done right now. And then I'll go to project one's thing. And then project two is another thing I got to do. And then I'll do project three. So I kind of just take it day by day and with like an overarching theme for the week where I'm like, okay, I need to hand in deliverables for project two by the end of the week. How do I make sure I can carve out that time? So for me, I just make task lists versus like schedules. But you know, also know your limits. Like I'm not saying do that until midnight. I ideally like to keep it between when I wake up. I get an hour and a half. Like I think creative work, this is not, this is just like my passionate thought, but I think you shouldn't doing more than 5 hours of creative work a day is really taxing on the body. Like I think 5 hours of creative work a day is like 8 hours of like not creative work, like like paperworky, like office work. I think it's the same thing. I even think 8 hours is a lot for a human being to do 5 days a week. But I think 5 hours a day is like a nice, I think that's kind of the limit. So be kind to yourself and also know when things have to get done. Be really familiar with how you work.
That's great advice, Christina. I love that.
I also have time. If there are more questions, I have a little bit of time. I just want to make sure that everybody gets
Yeah,
answered.
it looks like we've got one more question left from Stephanie. Stephanie, if you wouldn't mind
Cool.
sticking around a few more
Yeah.
minutes. Stephanie asks, thank you so much for sharing your work with us. I'm a writer and illustrator and want to create my own shorts and also make pitches based on pilots I've written. What kind of programs would you suggest for making animations? I'm pretty comfortable with Photoshop and Procreate.
Cool. So I don't I I remember when Procreate was free on the original iPad. Um I was drawing like I was just drawing the Beatles on my aunt's iPad in like 2007 or whatever. So I don't really use Procreate and I haven't used Procreate Dreams. I've heard people are very they don't like they had a lot of high hopes for it and some people were really frustrated with how it kind of panned out. I don't know how that's getting patched or if that's being worked on, so I'm not familiar with Procreate, but I use TV Paint and I use Adobe Animate. There are ways to animate in Photoshop. I actually know a lot of people that animate in Photoshop. I am very anti-animating in Photoshop, but that's just me. But like they have the best brushes. But there are plugins for Photoshop that you can download through like the Adobe, through their platform and stuff. But also you could do image sequences in Photoshop. Like you could just do it like you would do it on paper or do it like you would do it in a timeline. But the only difference is that it would be harder to preview the work like digitally. But if you get one of those plugins, it'll build a timeline for you and you can kind of you're basically like hacking it into being um like a Adobe Animate or something, like with the timeline.
Mhm.
So I would say there's definitely ways to do it in Photoshop. Animate I like because it is vector, so I don't have to be thinking about like losing quality and being concerned with like what the camera is going to do to my work. But I love TV Paint, even though TV Paint is bitmap, so you lose data if you stretch it. I love TV Paint because it's so intuitive. It's so like you can just jump in and just do it. And it's also a European industry standard. So it's not, like it's people are using this stuff and I think the brushes are not great, but the brushes aren't great in Adobe Animate either. But there is there is a free version of TV Paint on the interwebs somewhere. If you want to email me and talk about that, just email me and talk about that because I might have access to that. So if you're interested in TV Paint, email me. But also support TV Paint because the guy that runs it is really nice. And in terms of writing, I honestly just use like there's also a free version of Celtics, like an old desktop version of Celtics, because now there's like a online subscription version. But there is just an old safe to download version that's free, that I like to use too. Yeah, but people do stuff in Procreate all the time. That again, I'm less familiar with, but you can definitely use that. And writing and wanting to pitch your own pilots is awesome. Definitely make decks. You can make decks in Canva. You can make decks in Google Slides. Mine were on Canva, so use it. It's free. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much it.
Great. All right. Well, that was the last question of our session. Christina, I want to thank you so much for your time today, for your expertise, your advice, your generosity. So I want to let everyone know we have our next session coming up in 2 weeks on February 10th, and that is the journey of digital sculpting in ZBrush. So if you're interested in like 3D modeling specifically, we'll be covering that next. So stay tuned, but thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you again, Christina.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, if you got my email, you got my email for anything that you need. It might take me a while to get back to you, but I will do it. I don't forget. I have a student that I have to answer from a month ago, but I haven't forgotten. So I remember.
It's on the task list.
Yes, literally. Elephant's memory. Anyway, thank you guys so much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your days.
Bye.
Bye.